Remember when you were younger and learned the abilities of lemon juice being invisible ink? We'll keep a pin in that. It will be important later. Overconfidence is something that irritates all of us to a point, including me, especially when the person who is overconfident knows little to none about the topic they are a so-called expert on. That is where the Dunning-Kruger effect comes into play. The Dunning-Kruger effect is the overconfidence in knowing nothing. The Dunning-Kruger effect can affect us all, and we should all stay aware of it. The effect has an interesting background, countless studies done on it, and can be observed in today's society. The Dunning-Kruger effect has a somewhat unbelievable background. According to Dunning and Kruger in their Unskilled Unaware journal, they found MacArthur Wheeler. MacArthur Wheeler was a Pittsburgh bank robber in 1995. He robbed 2 banks in broad daylight, and he wore no mask and no disguise at all. He was arrested later that night, and when they asked him why he was not wearing anything, he responded with, and I quote, "I wore the juice." What he meant by this was he was wearing lemon juice to disguise or to make his face invisible from the cameras. Dunning-Kruger saw this was very unusual and came to the conclusion that ignorant overconfidence not only leads to bad decisions, but can also make you believe you're doing fine when you really are not. They found that incompetent people lack metacognition. This refers to the lack of ability to self-assess one's own performance. For example, one with metacognition would be able to tell when they're most likely accurate or wrong. Because of lack of metacognition, incompetents severely overestimate their own abilities and can believe that they're doing fine when they're really not. Anybody can suffer from the effect. For example, a student doing poorly on an exam may think the topic is very easy, and someone who's average or above average may understand the difficulty and how much time they should put into it. After coming up with the basis of the effect, they came up with 3 main predictions. The first prediction was, incompetent will drastically overestimate their own abilities, the incompetent will struggle to recognize incompetence, and the incompetent people will not be able to judge their own success to that of their peers. After making the predictions, Dunning and Kruger did multiple studies on a wide range of people. The participants did a logic test, a grammar test, and a humor test. The results were displayed in 3 graphs here. This is the logical test. As you can see, the actual test score is much lower than what they thought, and when it goes higher, their actual test score becomes higher than how they think. And same with the grammar test, pretty similar results, and with the humor test, very similar to what they predicted. These results proved the first prediction, but were unable to prove the other 2 because they did not test that for that. The study done by Dunning-Kruger was one of many done on the effect. A more in-depth study was done by Pennycook and others. Gordon Pennycook and other Yale researchers performed a study that involved 2 tests, the CRT and the NC. As documented in Pennycook and others' Psychiatric Bulletin Review, first they gathered a group of 200 or so in a study based through Amazon's Mechanical Turk, which is a service that allows you to find test subjects. They removed 17 participants because they either answered a question with a numerical value when it wasn't necessary, or they guessed or did not answer one of the questions. First, they had the participants take the CRT test. The CRT test stands for Cognitive Reflection Test. Their version of the test consisted of 8 seemingly easy problems that continually produced wrong answers. After answering the questions, participants were asked how many they thought they got right. The next test that the participants performed was the Need for Cognition test, or the NC test. The NC test is based on how well you did about yourself. It asks from if this is definitely true or how this is definitely not true about yourself. The test was used in a later study. The results of the CRT show that the average participant thought they got 5.59 questions right, when in reality the average score was only 3.8 right. They separated the people into 3-4 groups. 0-2 group, the 3-4 group, and the 5-6 group, and the 7-8 group, as you can see on this. This is because there was a lack of people in the 0 and 8 group, and they needed more in each group. The results show that overestimation decreased as the scores increased. As you can see, they actually underestimated the results at the 7-8 range, while in the 0-2 range, they actually did worse than much worse than they thought they were going to do. While the scores increased, they actually as I mentioned before, they actually decreased here. The results were very similar to the study by Dunning and Kruger. As quoted by Pennycook in the Psychiatric Bulletin Review, these findings indicate part of the reason why people are biased is that they're either unaware or indifferent to their own personal bias. This trend in behavior shown by studies by Pennycook can be seen in our society today. The Dunning-Kruger effect has been observed in all of history and can be observed in our society today. We all are affected by the Dunning-Kruger effect in some aspects of our life. For example, we've all answered a question confidently, thinking we for sure got it right, just to see it marked wrong later. Some consequences can be much worse than an incorrect answer. For example, as cited by Fritz in the Washington Post, Christopher Dunch in 2017 was sentenced to life in prison for injuring several patients due to misconduct while being a neurosurgeon. In a certain instant, Christopher was doing a simple spinal surgery when his patient woke up in severe pain and could not move. After being fired for this, his co-worker stated that he was performing at a very high residential level, but had horrible technique and he didn't even realize it. There are many ways to prevent the suffering from the embarrassment or pain that can come from the Dunning-Kruger effect. One can prevent this by staying knowledgeable on many subjects. This could be by reading, studying, or just watching the news. Another way would just be having someone that isn't afraid to tell you that you are wrong or making errors. In sum, the Dunning-Kruger effect is an overconfidence in knowing nothing. We all can be affected by this, and we should stay aware of it. The Dunning-Kruger effect has an interesting background, countless studies done on it, and can be observed in today's society. As Socrates said, quoted in the Washington Post, the only true wisdom is knowing you know nothing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you, Proffitt.